Evening, everyone. Calling the November 18th Norfolk School Committee meeting to order. I'll start this meeting by reading our mission statement. The Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Have a roll call, please.
Peter Schwalbe.
Grace Lockhead. Medora Champagne.
Lisa Sheldon.
Miriam Goodman.
Do we have any public comment tonight? No? Okay, and we also have no correspondence. So moving on to item C on the agenda, the committee chair report. First, we have some gifts to vote on. We have a gift of $350 from the Norfolk PTO for the 6th grade movie night staff payment, and another gift from the Norfolk PTO of $118.52, also for the 6th grade movie night staff payment. And then a gift from the Dave Young Children's Literature Foundation of $500, and that is a donation to the Freeman Kennedy Library for purchase of literature. So looking for a motion to accept the gifts as stated.
So moved. Second.
Further discussion?
Just thank you.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to the paraprofessional negotiations update.
It's my turn this meeting, I guess. Brief update. We are continuing to negotiate with the paraprofessionals. We've had, I think, a total of three meetings thus far, and we are scheduled for another meeting tomorrow, early evening, afternoon. So it would have been better if this meeting was on Thursday. There would be a more substantial update. There you go.
Great. Moving on to the joint letter we wrote with the select board on Chapter 70 funds. So I brought this to you all last meeting. As you know, DESE is holding listening sessions for districts to come and talk about Chapter 70 and how it's affecting them. Dr. Lardy testified at one today, which she'll tell us about later on. So last time we talked about potentially reaching out to the select board and doing a joint initiative and writing a letter to DESE, to the Department of Education of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Division of Local Services, who is running this study, just really laying out how Chapter 70 in its current state affects towns like ours. So Thais Hickman and I partnered together and rewrote this letter. I started with a draft that really started with a high level on how it's affecting the schools. She added a lot more commentary and edits of how it affects the town as a whole, and I think that's really important, where this town has many departments, but we are one town and one budget, and so bringing boards together and working collaboratively across boards. So I won't read the entire letter to you, but in it we offered the following observations. We have a residential tax base and minimal commercial offset, and so she lays out why that is and why we're in the situation we are in, and also attaches the master plan. Lays out the impact on the municipal services, noting that schools are the largest line in the operating budget. Our commercial base is very small, and the Chapter 70 funding, as it currently stands, is not recognizing that towns like ours need extra support more than we're getting now. The next one is how towns like ours, the revenue we get and the revenue growth we get is reliant on Proposition 2.5. So schools can't raise additional revenue on our own, and so we need the state to step in because costs of education, mandated costs, are rising higher, faster and higher than that. So we definitely need more support from the state there, and really highlighted a need for an updated and responsive formula. The 5 action items we really laid out. We said modernize local contribution calculations to better reflect towns with limited commercial tax capacity and aging populations, so required local effort doesn't systematically outstrip realistic levy growth. Index Chapter 70 to real cost drivers we can't control, like special education, tuition, transportation, utilities, energy, mandated services, so aid keeps pace with actual market conditions. Recognize infrastructure-constrained communities by creating an adjustment for towns where wastewater limitations block commercial diversification until state or federal infrastructure funds revolve the constraint documented in our master plan, provide a predictable glide path so communities are not forced into annual overrides to keep services level, and substantially increase the minimum per pupil aid amount to ensure it meaningfully covers non-discretionary mandated cost drivers such as inflation and employee benefits, and more accurately reflects the rising costs of providing public education. So it really lays out from a town and a school perspective that we need the state to step in and help towns like ours. Norfolk is not unique in the struggle. Towns like us are all feeling this right now. And DESE, I think, putting out these listening sessions, it's kind of a signal, at least to me, that they're listening. And so we want to take the time to, take part in this testimony. So I don't know if anyone has any comments. I did go to the select board yesterday and talked to Anita and Kevin and Thais about this. They all approved the letter to be sent in. Does anyone have any thoughts?
No, I think it was more powerful that we joined together to do that. So thank you for doing that. Definitely.
And I'll be speaking a little bit later about the Chapter 70 testimony from earlier today, but I think this letter mirrors a lot of the themes that we heard from multiple small rural suburban communities. The current way the formula is structured, there's a significant amount of money through the Student Opportunity Act that are flowing into larger gateway cities. Gateway cities are the only places in the Commonwealth where education spending is growing. Education spending in suburban communities is actually declining. And I think, as Lisa pointed out, the way that the formula works currently, the foundation budget establishes a budget that they feel, based on the Chapter 70 formula, is an adequate educational budget. They then determine, based on the community's relative wealth, what the community's local contribution should be to fund that adequate budget. And then Chapter 70 covers the gap. So it's overestimating local contribution and what small towns are actually able to fund. It's not meeting the rising inflation's growing faster than the Chapter 70 is responding to, and it's really leaving districts that are minimum aid communities like Norfolk to cover the rising costs of education with no additional revenue and no way to levy, other than to go in the override route, which are unrealistic in this economy and are failing everywhere. So the state needs to balance that formula so that it's a fairer way of funding education across the Commonwealth to all communities. So I think this letter hits a lot of the points that we made in the testimony today.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very good letter and good effort to be with the select board. I think the only area that I am concerned or hesitant about is the header for number 3 being Prop 2.5, because I think the focus of the letter is the Chapter 70 formula and process, and that distracts a little bit from the intent of the letter. That whole paragraph really is about our aging population and ability to handle continual tax levies and the structural imbalance that towns like Norfolk have. So it's really not as much about Prop 2.5 as it is about the kind of the relative, like, incremental tax levy that we can do as a town because of the limitations we have, both the voting population aging and not being able to accommodate large tax increases, and the mix of residential and lack of commercial revenue that we have in the town. So I'm not 100% comfortable with heading this as Prop 2.5, because at the state level there are political efforts to remove that cap altogether, and I don't want to be seen as advocating for that as the solution to what the actual problem is the Chapter 70 formula. So I would say, as a light edit, I would say maybe a different title header for that, at least, to bring the focus more to what the town's constraints are versus Prop 2.5 itself.
I think the only thing I would say is I think that what came up a lot in testimony that I heard today is there's an assumption of local capacity, that communities that have high income, high home values have the ability to fund education at a higher rate. Mm-hmm. So Proposition 2.5 prevents that. We're not advocating for it to change. We're just acknowledging that that isn't a true assumption. So the assumption that communities can't be because of their relative wealth, can contribute more is not actually true, because Proposition 2.5 limits how much you can actually raise the taxes in the absence of an override. So I think it is a mitigating factor. I hear what you're saying. I don't think anyone today was advocating for raising Proposition 2.5, but I think they were acknowledging that Proposition 2.5 is a very real factor that impacts municipal revenue. And in the absence of any ability to or interest in raising, and I think most people talked about overrides aren't passing, the economy is strained. Mm-hmm. Communities like Norfolk that have aging populations, there's not an interest in doing that. So there has to be another solution from the state side. So I think that was the argument that many districts were sort of acknowledging today.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's outside of, like, again, I mean, Prop 2.5, it's outside of that. I mean, have we stated in here the fact that we're close to 70% of our town budget goes to fund the schools? I mean, that's an important point as well.
But it's pretty much consistent with all of our regional, most small municipalities, between 65.
It's the lion's share of the tax revenue.
Yeah.
16 million last year for the last fiscal year budget. So.
Yeah, in most communities, Marion, what would you say? It usually ranges between 60 and 70% of every town budget, even in the larger cities, because schools are generally the largest employer and take the lion's share. But so it's a large percentage of the operating budget.
Yeah.
Yes, is anyone else reading that paragraph? I've written letters to the state on behalf of the school committee before, and I've always tried extremely hard to be neutral. Does anyone read it advocating one way or another? That wasn't the intent, but...
I don't interpret it that way. If Peter continued to have reservations about it, perhaps a thought would be to combine 1 and 3 to give the whole... You're discussing we are a residential tax base with minimal commercial offset. You could have a second paragraph that incorporates the discussion of 2.5 that just says, in addition to the aforementioned constraints, Proposition 2.5 prevents the town from raising residential property taxes above a certain amount on an annual basis. Due to this constraint, we are effectively pigeonholed. We have no commercial revenue. Mm-hmm. We are a residential-based town. We cannot raise the residential tax rate above and beyond 2.5%. If that addresses your concern. But I think it gives a holistic view of this is the financial reality of this town.
Right.
Peter, you were just saying the header, right?
Well, I was trying to think of a way, and I think, Medora, your suggestion is really good. I was also trying to think of a way that would prevent more work in terms of re-review with the select board. Is there a light enough edit that we can do to just simply de-highlight Prop 2.5 and focus on what the real problem is in Norfolk? And the entire paragraph describes that, with the exception of the first sentence and the headline, from my perspective.
I think from my perspective, I mean, I'm happy, I like offering the suggestion to consolidate those into one sort of holistic overview of what the financial reality is. I don't have an issue with it as it's drafted, because I do think that Proposition 2.5 is part of the problem. It contributes explicitly to the issue that we have with Chapter 70, because there is no way to mitigate the issue we have with Chapter 70 due to Proposition 2.5. I don't feel so strongly about it that I want to, I want to belabor the point even more. I would be happy with it either way, as long as it's being discussed, because it is, Proposition 2.5 is part of the problem. Chapter 70 is a majority of the problem, but because of Proposition 2.5, we cannot effectively solve the problem independently as a municipality.
And I think the letter was saying Proposition 2.5 is our reality. No comment on it.
Right,
That's
exactly.
just the reality.
Yeah.
Therefore, Chapter 70 needs to change in response to that.
Which is, I think, what the letter is saying. I mean, my read and my interpretation of the entire situation is you're in a tangle where we can't solve unless something changes, and the most effective way to solve the problem, not just for Norfolk as a municipality, but for every municipality that's experiencing this, is a complete overhaul of how Chapter 70 is allocated, how it's funded, and what the thought process is that goes into how local contributions are formulated. But Prop 2.5 is part of our existing reality.
I think that comes through in the recommendations, because the recommendations are clearly focused on modernizing the Chapter 70 formula, aligning it, because Chapter 70 also has a cap on how much it can go, what the increase can be, and that cap is often doesn't keep pace with inflation, so it grows, and then there's a inflation glitch that we have to correct. So
Yep.
I think the recommendations are pretty clearly focused on the state increasing minimum per pupil aid. I advocated today for an adjustment for small districts of under 2,500, having an inflation calculation for those districts, because the overhead of facilities and all of the administrative required costs aren't shared among a population of 1,000. It's a higher proportion of the budget. So I think the recommendations are focused. I'm not opposed to, this is your letter, so if you want to change it, but I do think process-wise, if we make any edits and you want to jointly submit it, the select board will have to revote it. So that's up to you, but we couldn't modify a letter that's written on behalf of both boards without them reviewing and accepting the changes. So up to you how you guys want to proceed.
What's your comfort level, I guess, after this conversation? Because I want everyone to be
Oh, I mean,
comfortable,
I still feel the same way. I appreciate everyone's thoughts. I disagree on the perspective of 2.5 versus this algorithm around Chapter 70. I mean, but is it worth the squeeze around re-reviewing it? It's up to the committee to determine whether it's worth the effort to make the changes and then send it back for review. So I'll leave it to, majority rule.
Okay. Well, for me personally, I specifically made sure that I wasn't taking a side on that, like I've done with prior letters, because I don't want people to say, you were trying to do this or you're trying to push this. So I think, in my opinion, the letter stays neutral there. And it's not calling for any type of change in Prop 2.5. It's saying this is the current state, and Chapter 70 needs to change. But if anyone else disagrees,
I'm very comfortable with it as it's written. I appreciate Peter's concern, but I think that it does stay neutral, and I think it stays on target and makes appropriate recommendations relative to, I think, the statewide discourse that's happening on this topic right now as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be opposed to making edits, but I'm also comfortable with the way it's currently written, so I'm neutral.
hi, Anita. Did you want
I was just going to say when the next, I'm not sure when the next select board meeting is.
You don't have to, but if you want to join the discussion, you're more than welcome to. Thanks for inviting me yesterday. You probably need a mic.
I'm not sure, because of Thanksgiving, when your next meeting would be.
I'm not sure. I think it's the Monday after. We have a lot of dates floating around because there's, I think that when I read just Peter's point, because I was listening to Peter's point, and when I read the letter, I didn't at all interpret it in that way, that this is proposing that we should change 2.5. I don't think there's a palette in our community for changing 2.5. What we're really looking for is a state to appropriately fund the schools. And I think the letter says that, and that's how I read the letter that Lisa and Thais worked on. I think it did a nice job of doing some of the unique things about Norfolk as well, that we're small, but we don't qualify for rural things. We're suburban, but we're not a gateway city, so we don't get those kinds of, so we're in this little niche, and I think the letter captures that and sends that forward. I didn't read it as being a proponent of changing 2.5. So I didn't read it that way.
Okay.
So you think the next select board meeting would be the 1st of December, Monday the 1st?
Yes, we have Monday, December 1st. We do have a meeting on December 1st.
So if you chose to make edits, it could go back to the board on the 1st.
But it's really a matter of vote, right? I mean, I've expressed my opinion, but that's one opinion of 4 committee members, so. And I'm perfectly happy if everyone else feels like they want to move forward and they don't want to spend more time of it. I'm not trying to hold the process up. I'm just saying what I think would improve the letter. That's all my inputs about here. So,
Did you have any other comments?
The only other thing I wanted to say is we're grateful for the advocacy of this board for the appropriate funding for the schools. We want to see our schools appropriately funded, and it's a struggle every single year to do that. So we're grateful for your advocacy, and we're grateful for the partnership and the work. And it's nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I would be looking for a motion to accept the letter as written for submission.
So moved. I'll second.
Any further discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll say aye as well. It's fine.
Great.
And I'm next. All right, great. So just to start, a few things that I wanted to share, some highlights, things happening across the district and in both schools. At the district level, on November 4th, we had that shared regional professional development day that we partnered with King Philip, Brentham, and Plainville. It was a great success. Teachers had an opportunity to participate in a wide range of professional development opportunities. We also had several of our staff members who presented workshops on different topics, special education. Katie did a couple of workshops on math discourse and math thinking. Dot offered some workshops that day. So it was a really great day, and another, I think we look forward to planning and strengthening this partnership going forward, and having that shared opportunity. It allows us to really, because we're a small district, we have 2 members of our art department and we have 2 music departments. So when we're bringing in presenters, we're limited by the number of people we have in different roles. So when we partner regionally, we can offer richer and stronger PD opportunities. So that was a really exciting and positive event. And thanks to Katie, who jumped in with the planning of that event with the assistant superintendents from the other districts. We also had a great evening workshop for parents where we showed the film Screenagers and had a panel discussion. It was, I was really struck by how powerful and compelling the film was, and how much it resonated with the struggles that all of our parents and I had as a parent with my kids. You watch the video and you watch the kids interacting with technology, and you feel like I've had that same conversation 10 times over. So it left with really strong positive suggestions for parents. There was a panel discussion. We had a local pediatrician, we had a mental health professional, we had Katie Appel, our school resource officer, on the panel, Trish Kelly, our technology director, and then Dr. Cameron and I were part of that. But it was a really great night, really rich discussion. Definitely encourage parents. There's going to be another showing in Plainville. Dot, do you know the date on that off the top of your head?
In January or early March.
End of January. It is not a film that's available for people to see. You have to purchase a license to show it. So it isn't something you can watch on your own. If you didn't get a chance, I would really encourage parents to attend the Plainville presentation, because it was really, really powerful. Some really frightening data about how we keep our kids safe and how we protect kids. There is a really alarming trend in the rise of anxiety and depression worldwide since the advent of the iPhone. That's pretty profound, and so I think it's really important for everybody to be aware of, and we're really working hard with our tech steering committee at how we are addressing that within the schools. So that was a great night. Upcoming on December 4th at the Age Olive Day School, we will be presenting the school budget in partnership with the superintendent from KP to talk about the Norfolk and the educational budget in town. That, I think they're all filmed, so you can watch that live if you're not part of the academy. At HOD, 2 things from this month. On October 30th, and for the first time in many, many years, the weather did not cooperate. It was kind of a rainy, overcast day, but the HL Day had their annual Halloween and Storybook Parade. Students were able to dress up and as characters or wear their Halloween costume, and they paraded through the halls of HOD into the cafeteria. I think NCTV was there filming, so that's available on their website. It was a really nice event, and we were very thankful to all the room parents who came in to help support that. We also had Title I breakfast, so our curriculum director, Katie Young, facilitated, along with our HOD math specialist, a breakfast to talk about the services we provide for math support through the general education program for students who may need additional instruction on targeted skills, and that is funded by Title I. So we had that Title I breakfast. At FK this month, We had, the FK School hosted a wonderful, very moving Veterans Day assembly. We had several members of our school committee able to join. The focus of the ceremony was really honoring those who've served our country. Students and staff members who have family members who are veterans invited them to attend. The students did a great job. The band performed, the chorus performed, grade levels shared poems and songs. We had Robin Tusseri and Lois Eppenheimer put together a very beautiful tribute video recognizing all the veterans who are affiliated with our schools and with our school families. So it was a great event. Representative Bond attended as well and offered some comments. So that was also recorded by NCTV, our wonderful partners. So that's available for anyone. And then earlier last week, we had a group of 5th and 6th grade students. One of the items in our strategic plan in the FK School Improvement Plan is to develop a peer leadership program to offer leadership opportunities for our 5th and 6th graders. And 22 students went to Bridgewater State last week for a full day of training through the MARC, Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center, to become peer leaders in the school. And during their day, they created an action plan of what they would like to see implemented in the school to improve the life of students at the FK School, which they came back and presented to Adam Tarzik, our assistant principal, Lisa, Julia, and Liz, who is our adjustment counselor. And they will begin meeting shortly next month to start developing action steps for their proposed action plan. So that's an exciting new program. Happy to take any questions on those, but just a few highlights. Great. Next, we have Miriam here, who is here to provide the quarterly school budget update.
Good evening. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what your budget looks like as of the numbers are as of the first quarter in 2026, but you'll see the projections. So this is your current 2026 budget and how it's allocated, and you can see that the majority of it is spent on instructional services, as it should be. In district administration, I'm anticipating a total deficit balance of $6,000 and change. Most of this will be reclassed because we anticipate administrative services being reclassed through SAC, because we provide services to the SAC program administratively for their bill paying and that kind of thing. For instruction, okay, let's try one at a time. There we go.
Very sensitive.
For instructional services, projecting a deficit of roughly $23,000. We have a new classroom teacher this year that we added after the budget was set for grade 2 based on enrollment. We also have some potential reclasses from our music revolving account that will cover some of this, and don't be alarmed, there's other revolving funds that are following up that I'll talk about. In student services, we have a new licensed practical nurse that we added, also based on student needs, anticipating this whole category to be under budget by $1,200. In operations, we will also reclass custodial expenses for food service, for custodians who are cleaning cafeterias, and for the SAC program. So that is seeing a balance of $8,000. Fixed charges, also seeing a balance of about $8,600. That's where you're seeing most of our contract benefits paid out for retirements and that kind of thing. And no surprise at this point, programs with other districts, we have a deficit of roughly $313,000 I'm anticipating. Our 2026 budget approved the use of stabilization funds. Not sure we're going to need that, but we do have $75,000 that the budget approved if we do need to. We will be reclassifying $233,000 from the circuit breaker revolving account that we will have to use this year. We also have the cause of that, partial cause, being one unbudgeted out-of-district placement. We did anticipate using the 233, but the differential there is because of that out-of-district placement. Overall, looking at a $325,000 deficit at this point, but it will be offset by the use of revolving funds and one-time emergency funds. So let's talk about that for a minute. You will recall last year that we had an emergency shelter and we received funding for that emergency shelter. They were one-time funds and they were received in late June and in August in 2 payments, obviously after the close of the last fiscal year. So those funds will be used in this fiscal year to offset operating costs, costs of ELL staff, teachers and a paraprofessional, translation services, supplies and materials for the program, other contracted services. We also have, we still have an outstanding McKinney-Vento transportation reimbursement that we're waiting for. Not sure it's coming, but it's out there, and so we might have to use some of this funding for that. The total projected expenses for the year will be spent. We're projecting spending $533,000. So that balance right there that you're seeing is going to be offsetting some of that 325 in the previous slide. Here's where your revolving funds are right now. And we do use, typically, as I said, some school lunch money, some music revolving money, and some SAC money as well to offset the operating budget. We have a projected use of $70,000 already built into the budget from these funds. This is where your grants are at this point. You see some FY25 grants that we're just finishing up with some small balances, and some FY26 funds that we're using as we go along through the course of the year, and we anticipate those will be finished. If not, all of the 25 grants will be finished by the end of the year. Some of the 26 grants may still have small balances at the end of the year. And in terms of other special revenue funds, circuit breaker and stabilization, as I said, the $75,000 from the stabilization fund, we are not anticipating having to use it right now as of now, but we will be using $233,000 in circuit breaker funding. Key takeaways: emergency shelter funds, one-time funds, not available for use for FY27. They're going to be expended by the end of the year. The FY26 budget, the $75,000 that we don't anticipate using this year, and any other available operating funds at the end of the year can be used to make a second payment on the math curriculum, to prepay tuition, and to replenish our sped stabilization account, if approved. And so I am happy to, gift account summary. Brief balance, $31,000 on the gift accounts, and donations, as some of which you've approved tonight, used for teacher enhancements, camp scholarships, other events, field trips, etc. So that is where you are. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leaving it to you. Have a great day.
As Miriam said, we are watching closely for the second payment for McKinney-Vento. That balance is carried on the town side because the town had to pay that bill for us up front, so that would be a budget transfer. And if there's any remaining funds, we may be able to use it in a way to help offset the potential deficit in next year's budget by prepaying math or prepaying tuitions. Obviously, if we didn't have that revenue, we would be not in a great position right now. So we want to try to protect ourselves from that for next year. So thanks, Miriam.
Great. Thank you.
All right, quarterly budget I can do very quickly. There were 2 reports of potential bullying this quarter at the H. Olive Day, so the quarter goes from the opening of school to November 1st. Both were investigated. We have a formal bullying prevention and intervention plan that outlines how bullying investigations are conducted. Both cases did not meet the criteria for bullying. At FK, there were also 2 reports. Both fully investigated along accordance with our district procedures. These were not found to be bullying, but in those cases, appropriate disciplinary measures were taken consistent with the code of conduct. We continue to provide instruction in anti-bullying and social-emotional learning through Open Circle and through our Second Step program. On that? Great. So we're going to switch the order, if it's okay, so we can get Katie to her soccer banquet. One of our goals as a district that we have been working on, and Katie has really taken the lead on that and has really made some nice progress, is to try to create a curriculum webpage that parents can view or visit if they want information about the grade level curriculum, look at scope and sequence, look at assessment information, and in order to make it transparent and easily available. So Katie has started to work on this curriculum page. It's our goal for the year, and we previewed it last night with our parent leaders. This is in construction, so we're not bringing you a complete page intentionally because we want to get feedback from users so that we know how to move forward. So we previewed it last night with parent leaders who had some really great suggestions, and looking at it, I can already see that Katie made some changes today. Yes. But she wants to highlight for you what we're intending to have on this page, and then see if there's any feedback or suggestions, and we'll continue the work. So go ahead.
All right. So yeah, yesterday at the parent leader meeting, they offered some great suggestions that I was already able to make little adjustments on here, so I would love to hear any other suggestions. The main goal of this teaching and learning webpage, which will take the place of where it says curriculum right now, is really curriculum transparency. We really want to help our families and our community know what we're teaching and a little bit more about the scope and sequence or the order. So one of the most, I think, one of the most clicked buttons will be the curriculum by grade. And so yesterday, the parent leaders suggested that I make that a bigger button because that's going to draw, I think, the most clicks. So we'll start right there. And what we did was, let's see, we separated out by grade. I only have, I'm going to show you 4th grade. They're not all done yet. But if you have a student in 4th grade, you can come to this page. On the side, I actually linked a DESE handout. So this was something that was given out at open houses at both Freeman Kennedy and HOD this year. And for every grade level, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed they have a welcome page, just kind of an overview of the grade level, and then one page for each of the core subjects that are really a summary of the standards. The standards in full are going to be in another part of the website, so that will all be there. And then for each of these subject areas, so we have ELA, math, science, history, social emotional, and the specials are going to be broken out once you click on there. So for example, if we click on English Language Arts, we have an overview of what the district really feels about teaching English Language Arts and the learning of it. And so there's a little bit of an overview. And then in every content area, so in ELA, math, science, there are the 3 same buttons: curriculum resources, units by term, and report card standards. So I'll click just to show you what that's going to look like. It's very small right now. So our core curricular resource for each content area is listed with a little blurb about the philosophy of that program. I call this the curricular resource and not the curriculum because our curriculum really are the state standards. And the resources we use, like HMH or Amplify, are more of almost like a scope and sequence and a core set of resources that we use to teach the curriculum of the standards. And then I'll have a button here that will bring you right to an HMH family site. Right now, it's not live linked. We'll also have the units by term. So by the end of the year, we'll have all 3 terms, which will then stay up. Because HMH is in year 2 and Amplify is in year 1, it's very natural to fall a little bit behind because the programs assume that students are coming up with the previous grade levels material learning, and they haven't. So there's some filling in the gaps that has to take place in the classroom, and it's not going to be the same in every class. It's going to be similar, but not the same. And so I'm hesitant to put out term 2 and term 3 ahead of time just because we're still living it. Once we live it this year, we'll put it out, and then we can always tweak it next year as we're ready. But for ELA, of course, there's reading, writing, and grammar. So these are the units through HMH fourth graders will be working on through term 1. Sometimes you're going to see, like it might say begin, and it just means they begin a unit, but units don't begin and end right within term dates. So sometimes they'll begin, which means there's not an assessment yet, and so it might not be graded on yet, even though it's in here. And I plan on putting together a document about our report cards just to explain that kind of thing, which will be put in the website as well eventually, but it will also go home in Wednesday's words. And then the report card standards are the standards that they're graded on the report card. They're end-of-year standards. And so, for example, if we're looking at rights opinion pieces, I'm looking over here, they may start writing opinion pieces in term 1. And so on the report card, there's going to be a grade, but it's not going to be students, unless there's outliers always, but students for the most part will not have met the end of year standard. So there will be a lot of 2s, there might be some 3s, there might be some 1s. It's a 2 or a 1 is not a negative grade. It is a reflection of the progress that they're making towards that standard. So that will be for every grade in every content area. Some of the other things we put on, so for screeners and assessments, this actually came out in the Wednesday's words. This is just another version of it that I put on the website. So talking about screeners and assessments, if you click on the links or the buttons, it's the screeners that we do in I'm sorry, I worked there for a long time. The screeners that we do here in Norfolk, Acadia and Sandesa. We also wrote home in the Wednesday's words about some of the benchmark assessments. And so there's information about the reading and the writing modules and the Amplify M class. And so any kind of information about teaching and learning, I'm going to continually be updating on here. Go back again. Special education links right to Dr. Tupper's special education page. Learning standards, these are the state learning standards that I'm talking about. This is truly the curriculum. And the DESE website, for those of you who, most of you I'm sure have seen it, it's very dense. There's so much information and so many places to click. So my hope was to find just the resources that would be most helpful to the community and put them directly on here. It still links to DESE. So if I click on the math curriculum frameworks, I'm going to the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, and it's the frameworks from pre-K to 12. It's a 214-page document, so we're not going to scroll through that. But if you're looking for some progressions, that's on there. So what else have I updated? Academic, well, I'm going to be putting information about digital literacy. We have a tech screening committee or steering committee right now that's really working on some AI guidelines. So all the things regarding digital literacy will be also posted here. English language learning. Academic dates will be dates of the terms and report cards, MCAS dates, things like that. And then on this side are some of the things that I think will be clicked less. I'm not really sure how to format it just yet because these are going to be more secondary, but we really follow a multi-tiered system of support, meaning that if a student is struggling, there are so many different ways we can provide support to them before they need to be recommended for an evaluation. And so through the multi-tiered system of support, that is where the NEST comes in. I think I might have put it in here. Nope. So the NEST is Norfolk's internal. Do you want to describe the NEST a little bit better?
It's a student support team. So it's a general education program. If a child's struggling and a teacher has been working and they're not seeing progress, they can meet with a group of their peers, with a special education representative, OT, speech, whatever relevant providers, and they look at the student's work, they look at the challenges, and they brainstorm interventions that might help that child succeed. So every district has a student support team process, and so that NEST is ours.
Thank you. The common accommodations, it's technically called the District Curriculum accommodation plan. And again, every district has it, and these are accommodations such as flexible seating, for example, things that any student at any point might need to take advantage of. And we have it listed in this document and a little bit more about what the DCAP, we call it the DCAP, what it represents. But in short, this is for any student. You don't need any kind of plans, just to get little accommodations that help them, give them the little boost that they need to succeed. There will be the curriculum review process, the district report card, so that's from DESE. Those go home already. And so this is just a link to them. Title I has a lot of legalities and paperwork. This is the Title I funding that we use, as Dr. Lardy has said, to support our math program or our math learning. So I'm going to put a little bit more information on there. But it's already really out there. It's just, I'll try to house it in one place in case anyone's interested. And then summer learning, which we are not quite ready for yet, but in the summertime that will be active. So I'd love to hear if you have any suggestions or things that you're thinking, gee, I really wish I really wish you put that on there. I worked really closely with Adrian Smith and Mark Peasy. Adrian is the design guru and Mark is the tech person who has immense amount of patience teaching us things over and over and over again. I really wanted to be able to add and change things myself as the year goes on. So he's been lovely in explaining it to us. Whenever we have questions, he comes over and walks us through. But I'd like to hear a little bit more from you if there's anything else you're hoping to see on here.
I love it. I think it's great.
Thank
I
you.
think you did a really nice job with it.
Thank you.
Very accessible and clear. Do you envision it like a couple major updates, or is it kind of living, breathing? If you make an update, it'll go in Wednesday's words to say, hey, check out the new section I added.
Yeah.
Is this like a living?
So if there's little updates, I'm not planning on sending it out through Wednesday's words, but if there's any kind of like addition to the website, which I do think just naturally, but being in a public school, there's things that are always changing and happening, and we're doing very exciting things that sometimes we want to share. So yes, when I will add to it as those things come up, but I like the idea of putting out a little blurb out in the Wednesday's words to say, check it out, these are the new components of the website. Thank you.
I think some of the questions that we most often hear from parents, and that's sort of what we try to put front and center, a lot of times we hear from people, so I'm sure you probably never have this experience, but parents will say, I asked my kid what they did at school today, and they say nothing, or I don't remember, or so they're looking for more information about what particular units they're studying. Like, so what are they going to learn in social studies this term? What should I be thinking about? And a lot of times parents say, I want to know where it's going. I want to see, all right, so where does this go in 6th grade or next year, or what should they have done last year? So the scope and sequence is really what Katie's trying to get at by the units by term, so to list exactly what particular topics they're exploring by term in each content area. We also get a lot of questions about screeners and what a screener means and what the tools are. So the curriculum documents and the screeners are like the top things that we think people are going to be most interested in. I think the other things that we'd like to add, again, are links to the particular program parent resources, because like Amplify has great resources for families, videos that show what, different subjects and how things are taught. So those things would be linked in here too. But the idea is just for transparency and ease of use. As we live it, I think there'll be format changes, or we'll look at the data and we'll say, all right, the DESE Title I information and the DESE report cards aren't getting a ton of hits, but we are legally mandated to post those on our website. So maybe those go in a different place. So we'll kind of look at the usage patterns to try to make things easy and not buried in multiple clicks. So that's some of our goals. So if you think of anything that, people ask me about this all the time, it'd be great to have that on this website. Anything like that would be great, because we really want it to be a user-friendly and useful tool.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks great. I think on the curriculum with the terms, maybe the term dates.
Yes, that's a great idea. Just to have it.
When term 1 starts and ends, et cetera. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, thank you. I can definitely add that.
Yeah.
So I think you were saying, so the the letters to parents. So they're always in Wednesday's Words or the FK newsletter, I forget which one, and then I lose it.
Yeah.
So it would be great if they, those links, it's like
The family letters,
the family
like that
letter
go
by
for-
grade.
yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I am definitely thinking about putting those, maybe I should have a button for that, actually, because I think that's something that many people will be looking for.
Possibly it could go with the units by term. If there's a family letter that goes with any of those.
Oh, that's true. I could just link each unit.
Yeah.
That would be
So I
great,
lose
yeah.
those emails and I forget where it is.
Yeah, they come in the building letters and not in the district letter,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's sometimes
Yeah.
hard to keep track. But if we do the units by term and say, all right, these are the things in ELA, if there's a letter that goes home, it could be part of that in that
Absolutely.
units by term doc.
And HMH, I'm sure, has something, they do have something similar. So I could do it for that. I could look into science and social studies and see what those programs offer for parental and community involvement.
Yep, and the second step, the SEL program, which is one of the buttons you can click to, has those units and letters that go with each unit. So those could be embedded in that, under that button too.
I don't have to open the second step. All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have any thoughts, again, feel free to reach out or send an email, because we are, Katie and Adrian have been working hard on this, and it's in construction, so it's easier to change as we
When are you
build than
hoping for
after.
it to be published?
I'm hoping for it to go live by the time we come back from winter break.
Okay.
It will not have all of the buttons won't be active. So right now, if you click on the curriculum page, it says it's under construction. There'll be little pop-ups like that on the parts that are still under construction, but all of the curriculum, K to 6 curriculum that I put on top is actually already written, and it just needs to go through each of the grade level teams to make sure that I didn't step out of bounds and say something that's crazy, because they have the boots on the ground way more than I do, and I want to make sure that what I put out to families reflects what's really going on in the class. So that is a work in progress. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dot.
All right, next we have Dot Pearl, who is our Regional Director of Wellness, to provide an update on some of the projects and things she's been working on in Norfolk and regionally.
I said to Katie, it's been a long time since I had to run to a banquet. Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about just wellness, and I listed, as I talk about it on here, I say all the 4 districts, because I always want to remind people that I work for the 4 districts. And I don't do all of the same things in every district, but there's a lot of things that are standard across the districts. So it's nice to have consistency for all the students in the districts if we can. And so just as a reminder, when my role was created, it was really created around the whole school, whole community, whole child model. So at various points, I might have my foot in some of these various tenets of health. So I put this slide because one of the main focus, and I think back to when I first came, one of the superintendents said one of their priorities was really around mental health and around increasing services and resources available for families. And so this is just to give you sort of some context around why we're still focusing on mental health in schools and why we continue to. Just some stats, 1 in 3 youth ages 12 to 17 had a mental, emotional, developmental, behavioral problem. 16% of children ages 3 to 7 reported to have anxiety or depression. And if you know, those years, 2022 to 2023, with some of the most recent of the children's data. The children's data doesn't get updated very regularly because the surveys are more difficult to do than when we're doing them with adults. But suicide has been recognized as the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 14 and 15 to 24 in the United States in 2023. And we see that, we look at 10-year-olds, and you have 10-year-olds at FK. So it's a concerning number, of course. This slide is from, this shot is from the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey. We do that at King Philip every other year. They're actually doing it this week at the schools, so we'll have new data the data takes a while to come back to us, but the last time it was 2023. And the students are taking this in either October or November when they're coming first into 7th grade. So as you see, some of them, the depression symptoms, self-injury, those are they're talking about the last 12 months. So they're reporting about things that they felt or attitudes that they had while they were still here in the elementary schools. The stress numbers actually on that year were lower. I just find this interesting. During COVID, the stress numbers were higher. And kids were pretty stressed, as all of us were with lots going on. So the numbers dipped a little bit. So I'm interested to see what the 2025 data will show us around stress. That's just to provide some context. So because of that, one of my big focuses has really been to continue to increase access to both, I put Tier 3, but really both Tier 2 and Tier 3 mental health supports. One of our major things has been working with Care Solace over the last few years. From January of 2024, we switched from interface referral to Care Solace. Care Solace financially is a better option for us right now. They also provide services not just for students, but for students and their families. We often find there's multiple situations going on that people need support for. It also covers our staff and their families. Even though we have employee assistance programs, often staff will feel, people are going to know, even though we tell them it's confidential, we don't know anything about that, but it gives them another alternative if they're looking for mental health support. So that Care Match service helps them to find those resources, matches them with someone for counseling. I'm going to give you some stats on that in a minute.
Can I just jump in
Sure.
and clarify? So one of the things that we did prioritize for Dot when we hired her, because of where Norfolk's located, we are not near an emergency room or mental health center. And the average wait time for students and families who are seeking a counselor or seeking outside support was well over a year. It's very hard to navigate. And so for our families, these are services not provided in the school. For our families in crisis, there is no, you can go to Norwood Hospital, Riverside, but there's no local provider other than that. And then to try to navigate and access care and support outside of schools, people were getting lost in the wait of a year, 15 months. So Care Solace is a referral service that we can access, families can access on their own, that helps them match with an outside provider. It's not an in-school service, but it's trying to address that critical need, because when students and families have critical unmet needs, it does impact school and learning. So this is an outside referral service that's been grant funded, that DOT wrote grants for multiple years.
Yeah, and we have it already paid for through this school year and through the next school year. So it's nice to know that we have that, and families are used to hearing about it now. And they also have access for people to care match people for multiple languages, which was really helpful to us over the last few years as those numbers have changed. The other in-school piece is the partnership between Transitions Counseling in Norfolk with Norfolk Schools for school site-based services. We've tried that for a few years in different formats, and we met this summer, and they said we have another approach that we do in other districts that's working really well. So it's going to be something where the school counseling team members can refer a family with their consent for a student to have some support from Transitions here at school, or a family can also refer their own child and call them, and then Transitions will manage that whole intake and help that family decide whether it's appropriate for them to do this counseling service in school, whether it's better for them to come to the office, and then they'll try to fill their caseloads between HOD and Freeman Kennedy. Right now they're shooting for 1 day of filling it. I think they're going to, and then they'll decide what's going to happen beyond that. But it's nice to have.
It's funded by students' families' private insurance. It's just
Yes.
addressing the fact that some families also have transportation issues to get to a counselor, so that would allow the counselors to come to school and the family to receive the services here.
And providing it in school, a lot of times people say, oh, well, we don't want it in school because they're going to miss math or they're going to miss English. But sometimes when kids are really struggling, they're not accessing that curriculum anyway, and they're struggling. So if we can help package them up and give them some skills to be able to get through that day in that content area, it's helpful. And the Transitions will also work very closely with the families around and back to the school referral person to try to make sure there's coordinated care going on. And so in the meantime, I also continue to build relationships with area outside providers, and I provide updates to the school counseling teams. They have a spreadsheet of all the area agency offices, and when I know there's openings, I might put that there. I know if there's a specialty that's added to that agency, I'll put that. I ask them not to give that to families because it's a lot of resources, a lot of agencies, and it's overwhelming, when you see it. And I think, sometimes families will say, well, I called 12 places and I'm on a wait list everywhere. And so they use it, though, if they have a family that calls and says, hey, I have this particular need, and they can go to that list and see what that's all about. I think one of the things that's really key to those services is that it takes some of that off the plate of the counseling team so that they can actually do direct care of the students that are here in school that day, and they're not spending time calling agencies and looking for openings, all of that. And I think this is something that we hear about all the time. Average number of years between a child's first symptoms of mental health issue and when they actually receive treatment is 11 years. And that number has stayed pretty consistent over the last few years when they look at those numbers nationally. So that's really hard because you think about a child maybe struggling for years and years, and it doesn't provide proactive care. So just to give you a sort of a capsule of Care Solace, get a little bit to know about that. It provides the care match services, as we said, at no cost, and then the actual service is provided through the family's insurance. We started January 2024, and through this November, there's been 16 appointments. I know it doesn't seem like a large number, but if you look at the usage since we started, warm handoffs would be your school people referring a family or for students. So there were only 16 referrals. There were 24 family-initiated calls, which is a good number because we've been trying to push the word out to families. And then there were 58 anonymous searches. We won't know how many appointments are made from the anonymous searches, but from the family and the school referrals, 16 appointments, 8 declined services once they work through that system, and 16 were unreachable. And I've talked to the counselors a lot about the unreachable ones. We have to keep reminding families, when you're referring them, you're going to get a call from Care Solace. And what happens is a lot of families won't answer those calls because they say, I don't remember this. I don't remember talking to somebody about this agency. So we're trying to educate them that you're going to get this call, please respond, and then follow through. So that's why that number is, it's one that's probably the most concerning to me, the unreachable ones, because for some reason, and sometimes people change their mind about wanting to get services, but we want to make sure that if they want them, it follows through. So the dashboard also gives me sort of a sense of what people are calling for, what kinds of needs are they presenting. So when they call and they say, I have a 10-year-old and this is what I'm dealing with, and they can say any number of things that they feel like they're dealing with. So anxiety has been the highest one since we started. Trauma has been up there, though that was a little bit lower last year. This is the most recent from this summer to the fall. And so those numbers have moved around a little bit, but anxiety, trauma, depression was a little higher last year. So those numbers continue to stay high. Okay. So mental health screening, as you know, mental health screening is something that schools haven't done a lot of at the elementary level. We have been doing screening in a variety of high schools for years around signs of suicide, around some of the other mental health concerns. The Department of Ed, along with many of the mental health resource providers in the area, have talked about this for a long time in terms of how do we identify proactively and in a preventive mode which students are struggling, who needs help first, and how to be proactive about helping get those services to them so that it maybe reduces further outcomes of crises or behavioral issues later on, and instead maybe helps give them more positive outcomes down the road. So the screening, last year the counseling teams spent the whole year learning about screening and what that was all about at the mental health level. Just like your academic screeners, it's part of a multi-tiered system of support in terms of finding out who are the kids that are maybe struggling and how do we get them a tier of intervention that would help mitigate those. So we know that the academic learning, behavior, and social interactions are impacted when a student is struggling with mental health concern. The schools spend an awful lot of time putting fires out a crisis today, a behavioral issue tomorrow, whatever that is, it takes a lot of time out of the classroom, but also for the providers in the school. So if we can identify students early and provide interventions to them to be proactive, you hopefully reduce future concerns of crises. So the team looked at a number of screeners. They decided to go with the revised Children's Anxiety and Depression Scale, which we refer to as RCADS. It's a 25-question screener. Quick answers. Kids take about 5 minutes to take it. A lot of the questions are around worry and the things that might cause them concern. I don't know whether they're going to stay with that screener. They have talked a little bit about whether that's meeting the need of what they had hoped to find from it. But so this year it was an opt-in, and we did not screen the kids who either didn't opt in, they opted out, or they didn't respond at all. So it was just the opt-in. So there were only 71 students of grade 5 screened. We decided to try this with grade 5 rather than your younger kids, because we also have these fifth graders for this year and next year to help them before they go off to middle school, where there's other concerns that may come up. The middle school in 7th grade and the high school, and actually all the grades now, do the RCADS as well, so that their kids are used to those questions. So of the ones that they did this year, there were 20 students that needed follow-up. And the follow-up doesn't mean that it's an urgency, that there's a crisis and we need to call Riverside. When we use the term urgent or clinical, what we're referring to is really sort of a coordinated response term that we say, okay, who are the kids that we need to do some follow-up on? So our urgent kids might be the ones that had the most concerns. They answered the most of their questions, were a higher score in terms of how they responded. And we only had 2 students that fell in that urgent category. The urgent doesn't diagnose anxiety or depression, nor does clinical. All it does is it says there might be some symptoms that students demonstrating, or attitudes that they're having that are causing them some angst. And so wherever their score falls, they would either be urgent or clinical. But really, again, it's not a diagnosis. It's just there are some symptoms or some concerns that the student might be experiencing, and then the counselors would talk to the family. The coordinated response requires that the counselors would see all the students that needed follow-up, talk to them if they had a question about, number 3, you answered this, can you tell me more about that? Very easy conversation that they might have as a counselor, and then they would call the parent and they would say, okay, here's what we found, let's talk about this a little bit. Oftentimes, and they found this year, that many parents said, we're already aware of that also. We've been seeing that same thing. We're already connected to a counselor. Or, yes, please refer me to Care Solace. Or maybe you can consider me for the transitions in school counseling. So they were able to start to talk about what might help that family right away. They're also looking at, what kids responding about? Are there many kids responding that they're just having anxiety about school-related issues? So maybe they could create a group for kids around anxiety in school and how to deal with that. And when we do the 7th grade youth risk behavior survey, it always comes out when it talks about what things make kids anxious, and usually the highest is school, followed by social appearance, right, and social skills, right. So, but anyway, so just when you see that, you just know it's not a diagnosis. It's not that they're saying, take this child to your psychiatrist tomorrow or your psychologist because we feel like they need to be on medication or anything like that. It just puts it on the table and gets the conversation going. And whatever they decide to do is really a coordinated effort between the parent, the family, and the school. The other piece is really, the focus for me has been always to increase families' awareness, and staff as well, of the resources, provide learning to increase family and staff capacity to support children. So, when we have different families having needs, so many, and the students have those needs when they're coming to school, the wellness website, we try to keep that up. I add things to it all the time. Just added some new information on the heat assistance programs. The food access is one that we've been working on, obviously, with all of what's going on with SNAP, as well as the increase in families that are having food insecurity. We updated all the family food access resources on the website. So we'll keep that updated. I'm glad and grateful that I can have the same website for all 4 districts, so when I update, everybody gets that same update on it. So we'll keep doing that. Also, the wellness newsletters are additions to the Wednesday's Words or the principal newsletters, if I just have a small amount of information to share out. Ingrid already talked about screenagers, but the other focus is really helping educate parents and caregivers and giving them skills to be able to best support their students as well. So we'll be doing some other things during the year. Again, another Screenagers elementary edition, as well as there's a Screenagers one that's related to addiction that Healthy KP purchased 4 of them for us this year. So we were able to show one at the middle school, the elementary one here, and the elementary one at Plainville, and then the other one later in the spring. And then, one of the things that we've also tried to do is really keep employees reminded that Care Solace is for them, and that there are other employee wellness resources that they might have, because when staff are struggling, they can't be their best for the students in front of them. So we're trying to give them that. So I have a Padlet that I provide to the staff for all those kinds of resources that are out there. Just briefly, Wellness Advisory. I chair the Wellness Advisory at 3 of the districts, and I sit on the one in Rentham. But we meet 4 times a year. Last year, in 2022-23, we did a triennial assessment that the school committee approved in April of 2023. We're required to do a triennial assessment again in 2026. So we will be doing that starting in our next meeting, which is in December, and going into the spring, so that we can have it to the school committee prior to April 2026. DESE this year, in partnership with Switch, the School Wellness Initiative for Thriving Community Health, created a tool for us. We used to use one called the WellSat from Yukon. Both are a little dense, but this one makes it a little bit easier to really look at the Massachusetts laws related to the things that are in the wellness policy. As you know, physical education, nutrition, and all of those things. So we'll be working on that this year. And then, current grants, I looked at, when I did this slide, I said, oh, it's disappointing, because other years I've been able to secure a little bit more funding. The DESE grant we've received every year, the superintendent's got it the year that I was hired, and then every year I've been able to apply for that. We've received it. This year, they didn't offer as much money to the districts, which was really discouraging, because we usually get much more than that. And that bulk of that grant pays for the Care Solace contracts for the districts, but there's some other things that the districts each have talked to me about. And then in Norfolk, we've been lucky to get the opioid settlement monies 3 times now to help support our family social worker here in Norfolk. I was really, when I saw Anita here, I was glad, because the select board was really supportive, especially in this last round, because they had more requests for funding, and they didn't have a huge amount that they were doling out this time. And a couple of the members spoke up and said, no, we really believe that these services are needed by the schools, because when we have any opioid settlement funds, we really need to talk about harm reduction, access to care, so all the things that we've been trying to work on. Any questions?
Real quick, how many 5th graders we have total?
Is it 162 about? Was that right?
162.
I couldn't hear.
How many 5th graders total? I think it's 160 or 158.
Yeah, it's in that ballpark. It was about half of the students that took the assessment. Just under half.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Was that expected?
And I think it's the first time, too, that we did it as an opt-in. We did it as a pilot in a couple of classes as an opt-in last year, but not as a grade level. So I think people are still learning about it. We had some parents that wanted to come in and talk through and look at the instrument, which people are welcome to do. But it was more the first time. I think, as it becomes more familiar, we may have more parents choose to participate.
Yeah, I have a 5th grader, and I was surprised by how few of his classmates took it.
Really?
So I don't know if that was expected, but he came home and he was like, wow.
Expecting about half. We thought it would be about half. Anytime you roll out something new, and I know.
Well, no, it's opt-in, and if you don't get a response, then so that complicates it totally.
Yeah, and some of the screeners at the upper levels, it's opt-out, and if they don't hear, they screen them. They screen everybody. But here, because it was the first time and it's elementary kids, I feel more of a need to make sure parents are in on the deal. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And again, Dot has done some tremendous work for our district. We're so fortunate to have her. The screenagers, as I talked about earlier, she does a lot of grant writing for us, a lot of work with our mental health team, a lot of professional development. So thank you for sharing some of the highlights of that tonight with us.
Does anyone else?
All right, next on the agenda is I have prepared some draft goals for the 25 to 27 school year. The goals are proposed as 2-year goals. Per the state, typically I have are requested to have a professional practice goal, so professional learning goals, district improvement goals, and then student learning goals. So that's sort of how these are shaped. There are 4 goals that I'm providing tonight. I do anticipate that I will be adding a 5th district improvement goal. I haven't drafted it yet, and I think I put a note in this. As you know, we recently applied to the MSBA for funding for a school building project. If we are selected by MSBA and invited to participate, we will have to do a new feasibility study, working with the new building committee, so I would anticipate drafting a goal around that. If we are not selected, then I think we need to form a space study committee with input from the town and other community members to come up with a temporary solution. So I'm just not sure how to craft that goal until I know whether or not we're going to be eligible for funding. But I think that's it's going to be very time consuming and a critical thing that I attend to over the course of this year. So that goal I will provide in December. MSBA is going to be making their decision on which districts to invite into the project on December 12th at their board meeting. So I will have a goal as soon as I know which direction we're going.
Okay.
I also based my goals after I had a chance in the fall to meet with each school committee member individually to talk about my evaluation and to talk about what you would like to see over the course of this year. So I took that feedback and incorporated that as well. So the first goal that I'm proposing is a professional practice goal. As Katie talked about tonight, and you've heard many, many times with the committee that came in March, that came in May, we are in the process of implementing a new math program. One of the biggest changes in this math program is that the way we're approaching teaching math is different. It relies a lot on supporting students in articulating and explaining their thinking, creating their own models, being able to engage in a mathematical discourse, prove their reasoning. It's a different kind of approach. Kids are not doing a worksheet of 20 problems. They might be doing 2 to 3 problems where they're actively figuring out the conceptual math behind the algorithm and being able to explain why the formula works or why it doesn't. So that whole math discourse piece is really critical. We see a lot of students that are successful, that are good at memorizing facts and memorizing math, succeed and thrive in elementary math and crash in algebra. Algebra is a gatekeeper to upper, more advanced math, and it relies on that conceptual understanding. So that is a pedagogical shift. It is something that I think that as an administrative team, we need to learn side with our teachers and really look at what are the strategies that promote active, enrich mathematical discourse in classrooms. How do we facilitate and encourage that? What are high leverage strategies that people can be using? So my goal is around working with the leadership team to increase the coaching capacity around facilitating and promoting robust mathematical discourse in classrooms, and to help our administrators as they are working with teachers, support them in implementing those high leverage strategies. I've articulated a number of action steps. We do have administrative team meetings weekly. I always have an article or professional reading that we start the admin meeting with, and we've been focusing a lot on research around math discourse. We're going to be doing a book study. There's an excellent professional text on the 5 practices in practice, successfully orchestrating math discussions in elementary classrooms that we'll be reading with the admin team. Additionally, we want to do, as we typically do, some shared observations to look at what high-quality instruction and those strategies look like across the developmental levels. And then to work with the Norfolk Teachers Association e-board to develop some common expectations for what do we want to see in successful math classrooms. So additionally, we really want to work closely with teachers to understand how the program is going and what their needs are for professional development so that we can really thoughtfully plan our data team meetings, our curriculum meetings, and our PD opportunities. So there's, that's another one of the action steps. We do regularly look at data, but we want to be really focused on administrative data team meetings, analyzing data from the observations as well as our benchmarks to see how the implementation is going, where students are doing well, where we might need to supplement or adjust the curriculum in the first year of implementation. I also am looking to work with the special education director and the curriculum director around providing targeted professional development for our paraprofessionals that support the math program in our resource rooms or other special education programs. So I won't go through all of them, but that gives you kind of a sense of some of the action steps. And then I'll always say this evidence for goal attainment. I can provide the admin meeting agendas, the district look-for documents, and the PD plan that will reflect some of those things. District improvement goals. One of the things that we are continuing, and I will be co-leading this year for the second year, is the Technology Steering Committee. We did a lot of work, which we shared with you at the end of last year, around screen time guidelines and intentional use of technology in the Norfolk schools, which was based on a wide range of research, parent survey, school survey data that we gathered last year and developed that and brought that to the school committee. This year, our focus is shifting, and we are looking at the role of artificial intelligence. I think we have to, AI is here to stay. It's not going away. It's in the background of a lot of programs. We need to have thoughtful plans on how we protect academic integrity and student learning. We also have to think carefully about student data privacy. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we've made in education is with the advent of social media. We didn't do enough proactive education for students on what social media, what the risks and dangers were, how to protect themselves. We don't want to make that same mistake with AI, so we need to have a thoughtful plan for how we're teaching students about how to navigate and how to use AI. We also have to think about transparency, and so where is it present in the schools so the parents and families know. So that's a pretty big project, but that is our focus for this year, and I'll be leading that with Trish Kelly, our Director of Technology. Our intent is to bring recommendations from that committee to the policy committee for a global AI policy for the school committee to consider, and then from there develop procedural guidelines for each of those things that are much more specific and explicit. So procedural guidelines for student data privacy, procedural guidelines for AI use in the classrooms, all of those subtopics. So it's a lofty goal, but we hope to have that work done. I hope to have a policy recommendation to the policy committee for January and the procedural guidelines by the end of the year. We are sort of ahead of the pack here, although it seems like we're behind because AI is like rolling down the hill. But none of our other regional counterparts have this work done yet. So we're sort of pioneering this, but we'll partner as we work through it where we can with KP and our other districts. Evidence of goal attainment, there would be the district AI policy, a curriculum document outlining the scope and sequence for what we think we need to provide for instruction. I do see that primarily being in the upper grades, although there might be some understanding what AI is in the lower grades, because students certainly experience that. And then parent, if we do, once you'll see in the action steps, I think we have to really do some thoughtful work around community engagement, parent workshops, sharing out what the school protocols are, what it looks like, gathering feedback from the community. So I would have surveyed or workshop records from those events. Goal 3 is around enriching and strengthening the culture and climate of the schools, fostering robust two-way communication and collaboration among staff, parents, and administration, and also expanding active family engagement and ensuring that our schools remain safe, inclusive environments. One of the things that I am trying this year is hosting bi-monthly drop-in office hours at each school building to provide more opportunities for staff to share their experiences and insights regarding programs and district needs. Also working with the with the administration and NTA roundtable meeting. We do those bi-monthly pretty much to problem solve any issues that are arising. Also, we have been advertising and expanding the district parent leaders group, so we have 22 people that are part of that group now. We had our first meeting last night. Not everybody was able to attend. I do think we are going to be looking at hybrid and virtual ways that people can participate. We're also thinking about on the website putting a place for the parent leaders where we can post agendas, meeting notes, things like that if the community is interested. We are reformatting based on feedback from the community and from parents, the district newsletter. So it's almost impossible, I find, to find just the right amount of communication. Some people want a lot. Some people say you're sending me too many emails. We have streamlined communication. We used to send a lot of connect edits, and people said, I'm getting way too many emails. So we streamlined, and now we only send things on Wednesday. It's either the building newsletter or the district newsletter. That people liked, but then some people say, well, it's way too much. It's too much information to read. So what we've done to reformat, we are really doing like a paragraph on each topic that gives the highlights, and then you can click if you want to read more about that topic. So we're trying that. We'll see how that works. But we are reformatting that. And then I will be working with Katie on the transparency around the curriculum websites, another area that I'd like to work on. Thinking about bringing some, we used to do, and I used to host parent coffee meetings for informal discussions over different topics. Thinking of trying that again on some of the subjects, for example, AI. I think it's nice to have informal settings where parents can ask questions and communicate. And when even though they're coffees, I've tried to stagger the time, so I would do one morning and one evening so that it's accessible for parents. Continuing working with PTO, CPAC, and parent leaders to try to host at least one community event annually. We have had a technology night. PTO did a great job with their cultural heritage night. So I'd like to kind of continue to think about that. We've been talking about like a math education night or different kinds of workshop. But I think one thing that we heard from a lot of families is they miss the gatherings, the time to come together for something special at the school that I think people really felt the loss of during COVID. So we've been bringing those things back, but I think that's important to continue. We started with a parent community equity working group. I'd like to get that group back mobilized again. It was looking at trying to bring resources and make things available for families, especially new families, to the district. I don't think it's feasible this year with negotiating 2 contracts and potentially a building committee, but I would like to see that come back next year. And then I've listed the evidence of goal attainment, and then the student learning goal. My professional practice goal is really focusing around strengthening math instruction, but it's a new adoption. So, teachers are still learning the program. So the student learning goal, I want to focus on ELA. I did add to the packet, I think, did we put that in the goal, the data from my last year's goal? That last? Yeah, I don't have it in my packet. Okay, yeah. All right, so last year I had a gap narrowing goal and an achievement goal around ELA. I put a summary of that data in your packets. I do feel that we met that goal. We had the goal was, can I just borrow that? We were looking to see a 4% increase in the MCAS scores for all students, with a larger increase for students in special education, because we're trying to narrow that gap. And the difference was from 23 to 25 was 4% for all students and 10% for special education. So I met the original goal for that. And then on the Acadians benchmark, we were looking for similar gains. Again, the data shows an 11.7% increase for all students and a smaller gain for students with disabilities, but we did not have disaggregated data available in the first year, so I only have 1 year of data, so it's hard to really analyze the trend there. But I think that goal was successfully met, so I want to kind of build on that. And the goal I'm proposing for ELA is around continuing to strengthen our data analysis and MTSS practices, looking to increase the percentage of students scoring in meets and exceeds. Oh, that's my time, sorry. Time's up. To increase the percentage of students in meets and exceeds by 10% from the 2025 baseline of 58%, getting us back into the high 60s, and increase the number of students meeting or exceeding the benchmark at the end of year Acadian's composite score from the baseline of 76.4% to 80%. So continuing that positive momentum. I think, Peter, you had talked about last year looking for lofty goals around our comparison groups, so I also have a second target around advancing Norfolk's average ELA student achievement to the top third of our identified comparison districts by the end of the 26-27 school year. And then the target 3 is around that gap narrowing for students with disabilities who score in the meets and exceeds category, looking for a higher increase there, because if they, if we're trending with the 10% increase across the board, that gap isn't getting any smaller. So working again with our special education director and curriculum director to look at how we can intensify services to try to help bridge that gap. A variety of action steps are outlined there, and then the district MCAS report and baseline benchmark report would be metrics that you would have to measure progress towards that goal. Again, the MCAS data doesn't come till the end of the year, so I have to give you my final data like I did today for the year after, but those would be the metrics for those. So those are the 4 goals I'm proposing, with an additional goal around addressing the critical care shortage to be presented at a later time once we know which direction we're going. Happy to take any comments, suggestions, feedback. If there's anything you feel that I should be addressing that I'm not within these, I'm happy to discuss this further.
I appreciate the aggressive goals towards improving test scores to kind of being back at or in excess of where they were pre-pandemic. I do think it's aggressive. I mean,
It is aggressive.
I am 100% behind it if you think you can get it done. I mean,
We're going to try our best.
Okay, and do you feel, just taking into consideration both Miriam's discussion of our budget, where we discussed where we would be but for emergency funding that we're using to offset some costs, and the budget discussions we've been having, do you feel you will have appropriate supports and the right environment within the schools to achieve that goal?
I think that's the hope. I think the budget is difficult. Obviously, these things are impacted if we have to increase class size significantly or cut reading or math support. Those would be challenges. What I do think we now have a strong core ELA program. We have rich resources. Our teachers have had just a year plus a little bit of learning this program. We have strengthened the MTS program and procedures that we have in place. I think we were able to keep our class sizes appropriate this year. So with those things in place and the right professional development and support, I do think that we will see continued momentum. I do think, as in the action steps that I outlined, there's opportunities for us to strengthen and make sure that our specialized programs and our pull-out programs are tightly aligned and as research and robust as they can be, and we might have some additional resources that we need to bring in. So budget is a constraint, but I think I'd rather aim high and see how far we can go.
Yep.
So
love it.
That's the goal.
I think those are great goals. You did a really nice job with them.
Well thought through, and as usual, and good goals, yeah.
One of the things that so I would need a motion to approve the goals with the 5th goal to come.
Okay, and then we would just vote on the 5th
Yeah, we'll just vote on the
separately?
5th goal when I have that, if that's okay.
So looking for a motion to approve the goals as currently written.
I move to approve the 4 goals outlined in Exhibit 7 with a 5th goal TBD separately.
I'll second.
Other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. And then the last thing I had for tonight, and I've already sort of had a preview through looking at the letter the school committee is sending and talking earlier, but Dr. Cameron from Rentham and I prepared joint testimony today for the Chapter 70 virtual listening session. One of the things that we have been struggling with, that a lot of suburban districts are struggling with, is the significant financial shortfall of the Chapter 70 formula. As I said earlier, the way the formula and the Student Opportunities Act is structured, a lot of funding is being targeted to gateway cities where there's certainly a critical need. So it is helping to address some of those critical needs in gateway cities. But educational spending in gateway cities is growing where everybody else it's decreasing. I think it's unrealistic. The challenge that we have as a minimum aid district is that we do not have the capacity to absorb these shortfalls year after year after year. And what it's pushing us is into cycles of continuous sustained cuts every year, which is eroding the quality of education and services that we can provide. Some of the challenges that we highlighted in our testimony today, one was around the inflexible local contribution. This does touch on the Prop 2.5, but it just really highlights that small municipalities, the local contribution to the educational budget is really built on property taxes and local tax revenue. That's the only source of revenue that Norfolk has. It is, people are stretched thin in this economy. Norfolk has high tax rates with very few services. You pay for a lot of services beyond what other communities pay for in taxes. And it's not realistic. That's not a realistic way to fund schools, and escalating costs is to keep going back to citizens to self-pay. So that's not, that is not an appropriate lever or an appropriate expectation. The other thing is we don't have, in Norfolk and many small districts, don't have the economies of scale large districts have. So when there's a budget shortfall, we can't just eliminate a position and absorb that. When you eliminate a position here, especially a teacher position or special education, it has a profound impact on class sizes. Or, when we look at administration, so the foundation budget, which is driven by Chapter 70, calculates what they consider adequate spending to provide an adequate education. It is by community. We underspend the recommended adequate spending for administration by about 20%, 15 to 20% annually. So we're already underspending. We're stretched really thin there. And we have, our class sizes are rising every year. We have class sizes, and we have for a couple of years. Our average class size is about 21. Cambridge and Boston, the max class size for K-2 is 19. We're exceeding urban districts in terms of class size. So we don't have the economies of scale to make position eliminations without profound impacts on programs and students. The other thing, we've talked about this before, but small suburban districts, the Department of Ed has mandated curriculum updates and changes. Districts have to adopt programs that are considered research-based, high-quality instructional materials. We've talked, it was a huge struggle to fund the ELA adoption. We didn't have the revenue. We had to stage it over 2 years. It was delayed by a year. We don't have that kind of revenue. So these are state mandates coming down, forced upon districts that don't have any funding attached to them. So we don't have that source. All the competitive grants that DESE offered were prioritized by high urban districts that had high poverty rates, that were underperforming schools. We applied every single year. We never got funding. Other districts were getting $500,000 to support these new adoptions. So there's lack of funds for curriculum adoptions, and as a result, it's reducing our competitiveness. It makes it difficult to hire new teachers, to keep teachers. We have a high teacher retention rate, but we're not going to sustain that if we continue to make cuts and we're hiring people and your job's not secure. So those are some of the things that we talked about at the hearing today. We advocated for four things that we think are critical to be addressed. Increasing minimum aid. We're advocating for minimum aid to be up to $250 per pupil, which is almost double what it is currently, in order to stop the erosion of baseline services. We also advocated for fixing the inflation glitch. Again, they need to address implementing a mechanism to adapt the foundation budget's inflation factor in years where the statutory cap falls below what the true increase of cost is. We talked about updating the model budget enrollment assumptions, and again, thinking about multipliers for foundation budgets for rural, regional, or small districts with less than 2,500 students, where fixed costs like administration and maintenance consume a disproportionate share of educational dollars. and then fully funding the special education circuit breaker. So when Marion was talking about how we're going to apply $233,000 to the special ed deficit for circuit breaker is the state mechanism for funding or reimbursing districts for high-cost educational programs for students with specialized needs. It comes after the fact, so we submit our expense, they reimburse us, and that money can be used to apply to the next year. It's only funded about 65%. It's not 100% funding. So the shortfall, again, has a disproportionate impact on small municipalities. So those were the 4 solutions that we advocated for today. We have submitted our written testimony to the state as well, but this is just a copy of it for your reference. There were quite a few people. They're having 4 different listening sessions during this afternoon. Quite a few people testified. There were several superintendents from rural districts, some from suburban districts. There were a few state representatives. I think pretty robust discussion. So I think the letter that the committee is sending will also help. I'm really hopeful that there will be some changes made to Chapter 70 because Norfolk's on the edge of a pretty significant financial cliff, and something has to change, and I don't think it's going to come in the form of an override from a community where people are already struggling. So anything that we can do, the Norfolk Teachers Association I've also spoken with, and they are considering submitting a letter as well. There were some teacher MPA presidents in different districts that spoke today at the hearing too. So I think a pretty diverse representation of people. Happy to take any questions or
I mean, as representatives of small municipalities, did you feel like there were other voices added to yours in that kind of?
I think there were. I'm trying to think. The superintendent from Berkeley spoke earlier in the night. I think Brockton. I think Alan and I represented Rentham and Norfolk. Somebody from MASS spoke. Easton, I believe. I saw Alicia Cabral there. So there were quite a few communities, and this was only one of the 4 sessions.
Yeah.
And then we had school committee, so I didn't get to hear the last because it was from 4 to 7 tonight. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think there's quite a. I think the primary areas they're hearing from are rural and suburban communities.
Okay.
They're getting a lot of access to revenue.
A lot of access. Got it.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. I don't know.
In addition to everything
Fingers
else.
crossed that it has some sort of impact cumulatively, not our testimony, but cumulatively. I'm hopeful because we're not the only. Like in the last few years, the last probably 3 budget cycles that we've been through. When I go to the regional roundtable of superintendents, everybody was in reductions, in eliminating positions. Medfield, Sharon, everybody was in the same position we were.
And there's a crazy statistic about, I mean, if you look at it's like 300 plus municipalities in the Commonwealth, and in the past several years, it is a disproportionate number that have even tried to go to an operational override. And those are consistently being driven, not a debt exclusion, not a capital override, an operational override.
Yep.
And every municipality is allocating 60 to 70% of their funding towards education. It's an
Already.
educational override. Like it is.
Yeah.
It is systemic across the Commonwealth. I mean, and I think in districts like ours, but also even in larger, I mean, Franklin
and
is
they're not
bigger.
passing. They're not passing.
Yeah,
Like the
exactly.
override Plainville and Franklin were unsuccessful, which leaves those communities cutting massive amounts of teaching positions and programs. So it's not solvable at the municipal level. It's got to be a state solution.
I didn't notice, when I was looking through this, I noticed all the dates of the hearings, but did they say anywhere, maybe I just missed it, when they're going to make a decision on this, or?
I think that this commission is supposed to issue a report of findings, and I think that's early in January, but I could be wrong. I need to double check that. I'm not sure if the submissions are due at the end of December, or if that's when they think they'll have an initial. So I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, great.
All right, that's all I had for tonight.
Moving on to committee and liaison reports. Peter, did you want to introduce the policy?
I was not prepared.
Oh, I can.
I'm sorry.
That was
Yep.
the only policy we have for tonight was meal modifications, and I think you
Oh, yes.
reviewed for the committee last night. It was just really, it's a legally required policy that's just putting in place or documenting procedures we already offer. So basically saying that we will make accommodations to meals and meal substitutions at no charge for students with disabilities or other special dietary needs on a case-by-case basis, and that there's a required meal modification request form. So this is part of the requirement for USDA funding for our meals, and it is not asking our staff to do anything that they're not already doing. So, but we are required to have a policy. So I think we were hoping that the committee would waive the 3 readings and vote to adopt.
I move that we waive the 3 readings and vote to adopt the policy as outlined in Exhibit 9.
I'll second. It made sense in the last meeting. It's
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Also, this does have to be put, now that you've approved it, in the student handbook. That's a requirement of law, so it will be added to the student handbook.
Budget subcommittee?
Nothing to report. I'm sure we will have lots to report in the coming months, but nothing this month.
We're going to probably have our first meeting in December.
Building committee?
just waiting and hoping.
Good update.
King Philip?
KP school committee was canceled last night, so nothing to report.
Really?
Yeah,
You're cranking.
very little to discuss.
CPAC, lots to discuss. Trunk or treat last month was their most successful to date. Their volunteer trunks included HOD admin, teachers, Norfolk Fire, Norfolk PD. The HOD maintenance staff were incredibly helpful. The Norfolk Lions supported parking, management, and decor and professional uplighting. And they're just really incredibly thankful for the community to showing up for their event. An email went out today on their eye care program. And they are seeking parent volunteers for their Disability Awareness Ability Acceptance Reading Program. iCare is running both at HOD and Freeman Kennedy throughout January and February. And it is an initiative that builds students' understandings of abilities and disabilities to promote kindness, acceptance, and inclusion. The commitment for parents to read aloud is no more than 30 minutes per session. You can sign up for as many as you want. There's a training session on December 1st. And questions, email norfolkcpac@gmail.com. Event happening this week on Thursday evening here. Art therapy and mental health workshop for parents. This workshop aims to introduce parents to the therapeutic benefits of creative expression as a tool for stress relief, mental and physical well-being, and self-discovery. Their hands-on activity guided by art therapist Dr. Laren Leone. Participants will explore various art mediums like painting, drawing, and collage to enhance self-awareness, reduce stress, and strengthen connections with their children. And then finally, one more save the date. This sounds pretty cool. February 24th, also here, Norfolk CPAC workshop, Rethinking Social Development in a Post-Pandemic World. In this workshop, they'll explore the impact of COVID-19 on children's social skills development, from the loss of organic practice opportunities during the key developmental years to the rise of technology-mediated communication. They'll examine shifts in social norms and habits have shaped today's challenges. So a lot of things, great things going on with the CPAC, and they're always looking for volunteers. PTO?
PTO started their year off strong, per their direct quote. 24 local business sponsors across the course of their initial fundraisers, which included the Back to School Night bake sale, which sold out at HOD, evidently, and the 5th and 6th grade movie night. They have already raised over $3,000 towards FK promotion activities, I think they put that money towards. They have rolled out some curriculum enhancements at the kindergarten level and at FK through the Discovery Museum and through Arts for Learning in Massachusetts. They had a bingo night last Friday that was sold out, so that's exciting, and they wanted me to extend thanks to the HOD and FK teachers that helped out with that. Upcoming fundraisers are fun pasta sales through the month of November. Not 100% sure what that is, but they say it would make a great holiday gift.
Because you missed the last meeting. It's fun pasta.
It's fun pasta. It sounds great. It's
fun.
And working on food drives in coordination with HOD and FK, I believe, PTO members will be transporting all of the donations and collections to the local pantries. And both of my children's favorite time of the year when they were students here, Scholastic Book Fair is coming up. So create your little accounts, load them up, get your books.
Or big accounts.
Well,
the dollar amount feels.
Well, I know. Books first was always the rule in my household, and then the fun stuff, then the posters of cats. So, yeah, that's it.
Any other liaison updates? Okay. All right, moving on, we have school partnership applications, and they are both renewals, so I don't have to read the whole policy. The first one is the Norfolk Teachers Association. This is a one-year renewal. The Norfolk Teachers Association is an organization of professionals who work with and educate children in the Norfolk Public Schools. Association is made up of regular education, special education, and special subject teachers, as well as various therapists and other licensed professional staff. Associated with the MTA, the NEA, and the Norfolk County Teachers Association, all of which provide professional development opportunities as well as educational support information to members. And the list of planned or anticipated activities that may occur during the year include the Norfolk Food Pantry, the annual scholarship for the graduating KP senior, planning a year in education. Planning a career, sorry, in education.
More than a year, hopefully.
A career. So looking for a motion to approve their application as a school partner.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next one, also renewal from the Norfolk Community League. Norfolk Community League exists to bring Norfolk community together to raise funds and foster the spirit of the town we live in through a variety of social, family-based, and fundraising activities. Our primary initiative is fundraising in order to raise vital funds to disperse back to the community through our annual community assistance grant process. So some of their planned or anticipated activities include the candy give back event, the haunted car crawl, the artisan craft fair, holiday craft nights, Easter Bunny event, and the Santa visit event. Looking for a motion to approve the application from the NCL for their school partner renewal.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. The minutes are in your packet. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved.
Second.
Anyone have any discussion, edits, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 9th. That is a half day. I don't know if that messes with anyone.
I am out of town that day. Don't disrupt your plans for me, but I don't know if anybody else has a conflict. Without feedback from Lauren, I would just be concerned about a quorum.
Yeah, that day feels strange to me, but I can't tell you why.
It is.
Oh, it's
conference
parent-teacher
day.
conference.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So we can always email.
Yeah, we'll plan on the 9th if that works, and then if Lauren can't make it or we don't have a quorum, we can reschedule.
Works.
Sounds
Does that
good.
work?
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.